It seems to me that the reason why so many people struggle with acceptance in any regard is that we tend to think of acceptance as something you do, that it requires an effort of some sort. And so we try to accept something, and it feels like a struggle, like we're trying to force something to happen. But in actuality, acceptance isn't something you do. It's not something that requires any sort of effort. In fact, ultimately, it's a ceasing of effort. To really understand it, what you have to understand first of all is that we spend most of our mental energy in resistance. And this is where so much of our suffering comes from, in the form of disappointment and dissatisfaction, frustration, mental distress and turmoil, is that here's the reality that we're facing, and mentally we're resisting it. If we pay attention to the thoughts that go through our mind, so many of them are things like, I can't believe this is happening, or why is this happening to me, or this isn't fair, or I hate it when this happens, or I can't handle this, or whatever it is. These are all expressions of mental resistance to whatever the situation happens to be, the current reality, or how we perceive reality. And so acceptance is really just the absence of resistance. It's the releasing or letting go of that resistance. And again, it's not about having to make any effort or exert any energy. When you think about it this way, that when we're resisting, that actually requires a certain amount of energy. To resist something requires some effort. If you're trying to push something away from you, that's an action that requires energy and effort. Not to push requires no effort. It doesn't require anything. It's an inaction. It's an absence of action, of effort. So what it means to accept is to drop that effort, to release that energy, and to relax into the moment, to be present with the situation, but without any sort of mental resistance to it, to simply allow reality to be as it is. So it's all about letting go. And when you think about it, letting go doesn't require any effort. Imagine that you're carrying something heavy. How much effort does it take to hold on to it? And how much effort does it take to drop it? There's no effort in dropping it. To drop it, all you have to do is stop making an effort. You simply relax your hand and the object falls away. But in our minds, we make it out to be such a complicated thing, letting go, releasing, accepting. And then we make an effort to let go, which really means that we're not letting go because we're still making an effort. So again, we have to understand acceptance in this way, that it's not an action, it's not something you do or put any effort into doing. It's really about what you stop doing, what you let go of, what you release, which again is resistance. So in order to accept anything, you have to understand, first of all, your resistance to it, why there's resistance to it, and then you have to have the willingness to release it. And one of the reasons why acceptance can often be so challenging is that we're primarily in a habit of resistance. That tends to be our default response in challenging situations. So when some difficulty arises, immediately we begin resisting it. So we have to reprogram our response, and that might take some time and practice. So ideally, you want to be able to release something immediately, once and for all, but if we're in the habit of resisting, then acceptance may take some practice. So we have to, first of all, be conscious of our resistance patterns, and then to learn how to release it. But we may not release it all entirely at once. We may only release some of the resistance bit by bit over a period of time. Or we might release it for a moment and then find ourselves in the next moment resisting again. So we have to keep coming back to that space of presence, of relaxation, and release it again. And you may have to do that over and over again in regard to the same situation before you're able to let it go completely. But the more you do that, the more natural and effortless it becomes, because you're reprogramming your response. And given time, you'll find that whenever some difficult situation arises, you're able to accept it more quickly, if not immediately. But again, that may take some practice, so be patient with yourself. And fortunately, if that is something that you really want to cultivate, life will give you so many opportunities to practice. So be willing to embrace those opportunities and to grow from them. If you find this content valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.